Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Mikkel Thorpe, and this is the Expat Money Show. Today's guest is an author, public speaker, influencer, content creator, and high-performance coach. By education, he is an anthropologist and also an entrepreneur and a writer. Please welcome to the show, Siim Land. Siim, how are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm glad to be here and excited to talk with you.
Well, I'm very excited about this because I have to come straight out and say it. I'm a big fan of your work. I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, so much so that I actually went out and hired you to do some nutritional planning and some supplement and mineral work so that me and my family can stay really, really healthy. And that's really going to be the topic of today's show is immune support and staying healthy while traveling. So I guess before we get going, why don't you take a second and kind of walk us, how did you get into this type of work?
Yeah, well, I've been always pretty interested in just health and fitness. And in my high school years, I got into weightlifting especially. So that's where I learned a lot about nutrition and exercise and that sort of thing. After my high school, I kind of continued on this interest and also stumbled upon this idea behind biohacking. And biohacking is just a way to describe controlling your physiology in some way to achieve a particular goal, whether that be related to body composition, cognition, longevity, wellness, immunity, or whatnot. So yeah, just a methodology almost. And yeah, that includes a lot of different things, not just exercise, also sleep and supplementation, and also different kinds of technologies. With just my own curiosity and interest, I started creating a lot of content around biohacking, first in my blog while I was in college. And after that, I wrote a few books as well and started my YouTube channel, started the podcast, and yeah, wrote several more books and started doing public speaking. So yeah, it's been just a linear gradual progression from there.
So basically had an interest enough so that you decided you wanted to share your knowledge and the things that you were learning. And then that's actually turned into a full-time business. I mean, that's the best way to do it. I think it's also really interesting because, I mean, I got into yours because, and my subscribers know, we just had our second child. And it was so weird. In the first couple of weeks of having a second child, I looked at my kid and actually felt mortal for the first time in my life. I'm not an old guy by any means. I'm still very young, but I looked at my son and was like, holy moly. I'm really an adult now. I kind of always just felt like a child. Even when I had one kid, I just was I didn't feel very, not old, but I mean, I felt very like I could do anything, that the whole world was in front of me forever. Now I had two kids. I was like, wow, I've got a lot of responsibility. So I started searching around for things on longevity and living for extended periods of time. And a lot of your episodes came up in search. So I was like, wow, started binge listening to your stuff. And you have so many great guests on the show. And I mean, actually, why not right off the bat? Why don't we give people the link to your show so that they can check out your work and find out what we're talking about?
Yeah, well, my website itself is siimland.com, and it has just the links to the podcast and all the other content, the YouTube channel. So yeah, a Siim Land on all the channels, social media apps as well.
Perfect. So it was kind of an interesting predicament for me when I started trying to learn all these things. And I have a background in nutrition as well, but I'm so out of practice. I wanted to do fitness for a living for many, many years. And after being out of it for 6-7 years, all of my knowledge I couldn't remember. So I thought it was very worthwhile to pay for your advice. So maybe we can go into depth a little bit more on the beginning on kind of what biohacking is and some of the tenements of biohacking. And then I really want to focus on the immune support for people who are digital nomads and expats and traveling around the world. And I don't want to get into COVID or any of that type of stuff because I think so much of it is politicized, but just staying healthy in general, with viruses, because it's no secret when you're going to different airports and you're meeting people from all over the world. I mean, you're going to be exposed to very, very different things. So I think that the first line of defense is definitely going to be your immune system.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll start off with the biohacking itself.
Yeah.
Biohacking I look at it from a perspective of it's a relationship almost between you, your body, your mind, and like the environment. All those things have like an effect on your like health and well-being. And it's just a way of trying to achieve certain results, like lose fat, build muscle, be smarter, or sleep better, whatnot, and live longer. Those things are their goals. And that's actually something that humans themselves have been doing for since the beginning of time. Like we've always wanted to overcome our environment in some way, shape, or form. Or like we wanted to hunt game better. We built spears. We started to cook meat. We started to grow crops. We started to build roads. All those things are, quote unquote, biohacks in essence.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that we different terminology we used. And like even like shamans, they use different mushrooms or something to change their state of consciousness. And that is also like biohacking, because they're literally changing the state of their body. And that's, actually something that a lot of biohackers nowadays do as well. And yeah, the biohacking itself is just a modern, let's say, human optimization. Modern technology is involved there. We have like different gadgets that can track our, let's say, heart rate and blood sugar levels all the time. So it's like a way of bringing more of this, let's say, like self-quantification into health and wellness that you can use to just be happier, be healthier, and live longer.
Mm-hmm. Well, when I grew up, I was the smallest, skinniest kid in my school from literally day one till the day that I left. And when I got into fitness, it was always, I wanted to get bigger. I wanted to gain more muscle and look better and things like that. Now at 38, I really don't care so much about those things. Like I said before, it's the longevity. So I think that biohacking is very interesting because it's not just about, okay, looking great and looking big and strong, but also feeling great and feeling strong and using these things as an entrepreneur so that you can do the best work possible, that you can stay focused, that you have brain health and everything like that. Do you see a lot of people coming from the entrepreneurial side to biohacking as same amount as the fitness side, or how does that kind of look in your opinion?
Yeah, well, I think depends a lot on the part of the world or the region. So like in the North America, it is very common for like the entrepreneurs to be interested in biohacking just to like mostly, like cognition as well as longevity. A lot of like anti-aging research and lifespan research is done in the States. Whereas in like in the Europe, especially like Finland and Scandinavia and Estonia, these are more, let's say, regular people just doing it for health as well and longevity. Although there are for sure like there are different people from all areas of life all across the globe doing it. But yeah, I think from my own experience, it's like a mixture of both. A lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of tech people use it. But if they are using it, then their kind of goals or their methods are also like different. They tend to be more oriented towards like supplementation and nootropics, as well as like minimal effect, those type of ideas of what's the least I can do to get the benefits of exercise and such. Whereas in like Europe, or let's say average people who are like housewives or fitness people even, then they're doing it more of like a holistic manner, that they also try to optimize their like environment, and they do saunas and the sleep and those things. So they're not just solely focused on like a cognition or something.
So, okay, so let's break it into different types of sections. Like you said, okay, we have sleep, we have the nootropics, we have supplementation, we have fitness. Pick one of those, and then let's give a breakdown and maybe some tips or some advice that people can actually put into their lives after listening to this episode and actually make a difference in their life, because that's what this is about. We want to inspire people, we want to help people, we want to arm them with the right type of knowledge. So decide on one of them, and then let's go from there and kind of work our way through. And we don't have to get super, super deep, but at least enough so that people have a good understanding of these types of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll maybe start with the sleep, because like a lot of entrepreneurs, especially, or traveling, if you're traveling across the world, then sleep is suffering quite easily. So, sleep is important, and lack of sleep is linked to many these chronic diseases, as well as like accelerated aging and neurodegeneration. So one of the biggest things that usually hinders sleep is like these circadian rhythm mismatches, and your body already has its own built-in rhythm, or this clock that is running based upon the time of the day, and that is dictated by the light signals that it gets from the environment. And the sunlight is like the biggest environmental clock, or the sun itself, and our body also has its inner clock inside the brain that controls digestion, controls moods, controls metabolic functions and hormones, etc., etc. And if that clock gets basically off sync, or it gets disrupted by something, then a lot of other health problems also come from that because of this desynchronization. Whereas if your clocks are aligned, then it's much easier to also fall asleep as well as be healthier. And unfortunately, in the modern world, like all this technology is amazing, but it's also very easily disrupts our sleep. So the blue light, the artificial light that you get from your smartphone and the screens, that's fine during daytime in moderation, but at nighttime when you're about to go to sleep, then it does shut down a lot of these sleep hormones that your body produces or would produce naturally. And as a result of that, you're actually not feeling that tired. And even if you do fall asleep, then it takes a bit longer for your body to, go through these repair processes because of that. So yeah, a lot of this bright light at night, mostly this blue light, blue wave length spectrum from the smartphones is one of the biggest things that subconsciously as well as like directly physically has this negative effect on your sleep quality.
Okay, so with these hormones that you're talking about, is that things like melatonin? Because I mean, we see melatonin on the grocery store shelves or the pharmacy shelves, and it's supposed to be a sleep aid. Is that something that is good to take, not good to take? What's your opinion on something like that?
Yeah, like melatonin is one of the hormones that is affected by these circadian rhythms. And I do think, and melatonin is more than just a sleep hormone. It's also like an antioxidant. It regulates many like anti-aging pathways in the body and has a immune strengthening benefits. So it's very important. And if you are, let's say, blocking the melatonin production with artificial light, then you would have like a, worse health outcomes as a result of that. When it comes to taking a supplemental melatonin, then I'm not against it for sure. Like it can definitely increase your melatonin levels and improve your sleep quality. And there aren't any studies that would indicate that it would have like a suppressive effect on your natural melatonin production. So even if you stop taking it, then your body would resume producing it naturally. So that's fine, and that is good. I do take it on quite frequently if I'm like feeling tired or if I have like some mismatch on my circadian rhythms. But it's maybe like sometimes it's good not to take it because of like this psychological dependence. So if you're used to taking it all the time, then you're creating this ritual about it and almost like a placebo effect that if I don't take it, then I'm not going to sleep good. So like psychologically, it's good to not be dependent of any kind of a supplement to sleep good or do anything. It's much better to have like this everything else optimized first and then use the supplement or these quick fixes whenever you need to actually.
The reasons I always took melatonin in the past was, say I'm flying across the world and I'm on a completely different time zone. The way I always thought about it was like the reset button. If I'm normally going to bed at 10 p.m., but now 10 p.m. of where I am is actually the middle of the day in my new country, well, I need to completely reset my sleep schedule. Is that a good way to use melatonin to kind of help you get over jet lag in a faster period of time?
Yeah, it is one of the best ways to do that. And you can definitely use it to like induce some sleep onset or make you a bit sleepier, which is definitely good. One of the best ways to actually help with jet lag, in my opinion, is this intermittent fasting. So not eating because food has also like a really powerful effect on these circadian clocks. And usually, when you're flying, then your like metabolism is in this like suspended state, and it's waiting to receive the signal from your food intake to see like what time of the day is almost. So if you're let's say you're flying into a new time zone and you eat in that time zone, then your body while having fasted during the flight, then eating in that new time zone helps you to adjust to the new time zone faster. Whereas if you were to eat at night in the new time zone, then your body would still think that it's night, even if the in the original time zone where you flew from, it's daytime there. Your body would still think that it's nighttime. If you were to eat that.
That makes sense. I never thought about that before. I do intermittent fasting. I was doing it before I met you, and then I've kind of ramped it up since I've been working with you. So I think I was doing like 13, 14 hours of fasting and, 12 hours of eating. So we've scaled that back. I'm doing about 16 hours of fasting and 8 hours of eating at the moment. It actually only took me about a week to get accustomed to it. I didn't think I was going to be honest. And actually, it was easiest instead of moving it all on one side. I was able to actually do it, stop eating a little bit later at night, and then start my first meal a little bit later in the day. So I just kind of carved, say, 1 hour off of each side. And I haven't had any adverse effects. Actually, I find I have more energy in the day, which is kind of weird and not exactly what we think of when, like, we always think of you eat food to get energy, and then the more energy you have, the better off you're going to be. Actually, when I eat all day long, I feel more tired and a little bit groggy sometimes. So
Yeah.
let's go into your opinions about intermittent fasting, and I guess maybe a quick breakdown of what it is and then why people might want to consider this.
Yeah, well, intermittent fasting itself is not eating, so to say, or timing when you eat, much rather. And the kind of more scientific term would be like time restricted eating. So instead of eating 3-6 times a day, you're confining your daily food intake in a certain time frame, whether that be 4 hours, 2 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, or something like that. So the idea behind that, or the benefits, is that like a lot of people report better mental clarity and focus because of food and digestion takes a lot of energy. So you have to burn a lot of calories to digest the food itself. So it does take energy, and usually people the siesta, you take a nap afternoon, comes from just eating something like a larger, heavier meal at lunch. And with fasting, you'd actually improve your own body's ability to produce energy from its internal sources. So rather than being reliant on the outside calories or the food, you're helping to like burn your own body fat, and in so doing, you're just reducing these cravings, reducing hunger levels, and just having more energy throughout the day as a result of that. Of course, there are also like a lot of health benefits, medical health benefits seen in research, like better blood sugar regulation, lower insulin, lower blood pressure, lower inflammation, as well as like when it comes to anti-aging and longevity, then fasting is one of the few things that has this effect on activating many of these longevity pathways in the body that are linked with like greater longevity and lifespan even.
Okay, I want to pick your brain a little bit about intermittent fasting because I actually have several questions that I truly do not know the answer to, but I want to know if I'm doing it quote unquote right or wrong. So first thing in the morning, I like coffee. I like black coffee, no milk, no sugar, espressos. If I'm drinking coffee in the morning, does that consider me like breaking my fast or no?
No, not really. So
Okay.
the coffee doesn't have like calories, any like real calories. It has maybe like 2 or 3 calories, but it's not like significant to quote unquote break the fast. And actually, like the coffee may enhance the benefits of the fast because you're basically activating a lot of the similar pathways in the body with the caffeine and the coffee than you do with fasting. So this like increased fat burning, increase like stress response a little bit, as well as like depletion of certain like nutrients or like glucose, etc., lowest blood sugar. So yeah, the that is like a similar signal that you actually get from coffee.
Okay, so it's actually the calories that people need to worry about, which are going to break the fast. So in the same vein of thought, then someone could have a cup of tea, once again, no milk, no sugar. They can certainly drink water, any type of beverage, which is does not have calories. Is that right?
Yeah, like the teas don't break a fast, mineral waters don't, even like apple cider vinegar, probably really doesn't have any calories. And in some in some essence, you could also have like things like diet soda or something. Although it has also maybe 2 to 3 calories, it's still not that significant. So there is like a certain buffer zone that you can get away with. Like maybe you could even eat 15 calories or something, 50 calories, and not really see like a significant change in your body's biochemistry, because it's not like this black and white. It's not like this like a on and off switch.
Okay, that's interesting. Because, and you brought up apple cider vinegar. That's another thing. Every single morning for 5-6 years, I've had 1-2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar and some purified water. And I kind of wondered about that as well. Like, is it really only water I should be putting in my body, or can I have these other types of things? Another one is I take my vitamins at night. Like these days, I'm taking fish oil or krill oil or things like that. And I'm taking my magnesium and other things. But that is happening 3 hours after my last meal or something. So I've had pretty much stomach emptying. Does that affect the fasting, or are those such low amounts that it doesn't really matter?
Yeah, like that, they don't probably matter. Like the magnesium doesn't have calories, and the fish oil, it may have like 5 or 10 calories at max, but yeah, it's so small, and it's not going to be a problem. Like, because you're like, even like 3 or 4 hours after your last meal, you're still not completely fasted, quote unquote, like, because you're digesting the food, and the food that you ate is like basically the nutrients are in the bloodstream or still there. So you're like burning the food that you ate, and it takes actually like a up to 8 or 10 hours to actually really go into like a full fasted state.
Okay, wow. So what would the timings be if someone were to come to you and ask that they wanted to get into intermittent fasting? What would be like the tips or the timings or the first steps for someone wanting to put something like this into their life? And especially for the people like on my list who are traveling extensively, digital nomads, and have to live a very international life.
Yeah, well, fasting is a stressor like anything else, like similar exercise. So if you're not really used to it, or like not really tolerant of it, then it doesn't make sense to immediately jump into it and go for like the longest, craziest fast. So if you're new to this, then yeah, just start off by, like, the first thing is probably just eliminate snacking. So we are having conditioned to snack all the time as well, which isn't actually that good for you, because you're constantly spiking your blood sugar levels, especially if you're having like bad snacks. So yeah, like snacking itself is just like a bad habit, and eliminating that already gives you like some of this improved energy production. The next step would be to postpone some of the first meal that you're having in the day. Usually people start to eat immediately after waking up, but most people who are doing the intermittent fasting, then they much rather would skip the breakfast, and they usually eat only like lunch and dinner. That's what I also prefer, to skip the first half of the day. And yeah, it will be like easiest to just wait a few hours at least before you eat, just to see like how you respond, because chances are you may actually not be feeling that hungry. It's just like this habitual response that you taught yourself to do, like just like a signal or a trigger that you start to brew coffee, and then you also have toast or a croissant or something like that, which is like automatically without even thinking about it. So it does take a little bit of effort, but fortunately, fasting has like a positive effect on the brain as well, like it studies. So theoretically, you could like override it by making new connections thanks to the brain power that you have from fasting. So yeah, I think generally you don't need to go on like these very long crazy fasts, at least like the first few weeks, because it does take a bit time to get used to it. So start skipping breakfast a little bit, postponing it for a later day, and try to like eliminate most of the snacking.
Well, it's so funny because it's so exactly the opposite of what we were taught in school and in society. Like, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And then there's pictures of like breakfast cereal and like pasteurized milk and, sugary crap. I mean,
yeah,
I don't want to get too much into the politics of this, because I certainly have my own opinion of this, but it is just kind of interesting when you start to learn that basically everything you were taught when you were young is actually kind of wrong.
Yeah, there is. It's very hard to make money out of telling people not to eat. There's no product, although there actually have been like new products that do come out, like this bars, like food bars that mimic fasting, quote unquote, that they don't kick you out of fasted state or they don't raise your blood sugar, etc. But it's still like a marketing thing going now.
And then what about body composition? Does fasting have an effect on how your body looks as well?
Well, yeah, certainly. Like if you're using it for weight loss or fat loss, then you should see like just less fat mass, maybe more defined muscles underneath the fat. So yeah, depends on how you're using it. Like you don't have to lose weight with fasting if you don't want to. But a lot of the times people who do it for that reason, and almost like also naturally that they lose a bit of a weight because they eat less and less often. So then habitual calorie intake is going to be lower for the rest of the day. In terms of like muscle growth, so fasting doesn't have like a direct effect on muscle growth because you still need to eat calories, especially protein, to build muscle. But fasting may like have like a promoting effect on growth hormone. So growth hormone isn't like a specifically muscle building hormone, but it does have anti-catabolic effects. So it helps you to maintain a bit muscle. So if you become very used to fasting, then you can also maybe preserve a bit more muscle mass if you are in like a serious calorie deficit.
Okay, interesting. I love these types of conversations because in my story, I mean, I started traveling around the world when I was a teenager. And when I was probably about 20 years, no, younger than that, 18 or 19 years old, I went to North Africa and I got really, really brutal food poisoning. Like I was praying to God to die. I wasn't praying to God to get better. I was praying to die and put me out of my misery. In Morocco, it was the worst experience of my life. And after that, I was sick for like 10 years. I went to the doctors, I went to the hospital, they gave me antibiotics. I would take the antibiotics and then I would get sick again and I'd take antibiotics again and again and again, 5, 6, 7 times listening to the doctors. And fast forward about 10 years and I started really getting into fitness. Like, I mean, it became my entire life. I started geeking out on anything and everything, reading books. I wanted to go to university to be a registered dietitian. I got all the university textbooks, learning. And I started working with coaches in the fitness sector. And one of the guys that I worked with actually put me on accidentally a zero gluten, like a non-gluten diet. And I was like, it was so weird. I had 5 days of really restrictive eating, like really specific eating, and then like 1 day or possibly 2 days of cheat meals. So absolutely, first thing I do is go out and eat a whole large pizza. And then I'd be curled up in a ball for like 2 days afterwards. I was like, oh, that's weird. Then the next week I would eat a giant plate of pasta. And then once again, I would be in the fetal position for like a day or two. Well, it only took me about 2 or 3 weeks to figure out that gluten was the problem. And now I had been in the hospital, like overnight stays for this condition. I basically went from 51 kilos to about 60, 62, 63 kilos in 3 months after I stopped eating gluten because I had been so sick. I was on the toilet 5, 6, 7 times a day. And then when I started getting really into it, I started eating a lot. And I tell this story because I do have a question coming, I promise. And then I went from about 60 some odd kilos to about 75 kilos and not pure muscle, but quite strong, quite great shape. However, what they always taught me was you need to constantly be eating, like around the clock, nonstop, set your alarm, wake up in the middle of the night, have a meal, then go back to bed, have a bowl of nuts next to you and be eating walnuts throughout the day, constantly eating. So I tell this whole story because you mentioned about people snacking and actually how we don't need to snack. So it's kind of confusing in my brain on like on intermittent fasting and restrictive eating, and then on bodybuilding side who are like, you need to eat all around the time. So not who's right, but I mean, why is it like this? Like, why are there such different trains of thought on these types of things?
Yeah, well, when you are like a bodybuilder, then it would make sense to be eating more frequently for sure, because then you can eat more calories, but you also keep your body in this growth state all the time as well. So it's just that the most average people, they don't have any bodybuilding goals or that serious, and they don't need to do that, and it's much easier for them to actually restrict it and eliminate some of the meals. Yeah, like a bodybuilder would probably want to do that, but even then, like you don't need to do that. Like there, you can easily still build muscle if you eat only like twice a day or even like once a day. It's just that the time frame of that may be a bit slower, so your growth process can be a bit slower. So because whenever you do eat with food that has protein, then you're promoting this muscle protein synthesis, and there's only like a certain threshold that you can reach. So even if you eat let's say you eat 30 grams of protein, which is the kind of the threshold limit, eating 60 grams isn't going to result in more muscle growth. To overcome that limit, you need to be eating like 6 times a day and spike it frequently. So that's why if you were to be a bodybuilder, then you would want to have like smaller meals and several times, whereas the average person, they don't need to do that. Basically, that is the easy answer.
Well, I remember that the big thing that I had always heard was cortisol. Like this was like the devil, and you wanted to make sure that this hormone was never released in your body, that you never wanted to go into a catabolic state. What does the science kind of tell us about that and its relationship to food and eating at the moment?
Yeah, well, fasting is a stressor, and it can raise cortisol, the stress hormone. It's just that cortisol itself isn't always bad. Like you need cortisol to wake up in the morning. So if you have low cortisol in the morning, then you're actually tired and groggy, and you wouldn't have like any energy to get up. So cortisol is somewhat good because also helps with like fat burning. Like when you're doing cardio, for example, or HIIT cardio, then you're releasing also a lot of cortisol, and that kind of signals the body to start to burn fat as well. So yeah, it's just like the amount of cortisol can be a problem. So if you are, let's say, chronically stressed out, sleep deprived, overtraining, and being on a restricted diet, under eating calories, then the cortisol can become a problem. But it's just that just saying that fasting is bad because it raises cortisol, then exercise should also be bad, because exercise does also release cortisol. So the amount is important, and your body does, eventually build some tolerance to any kind of a stressor. So, the more often you do exercise, the higher your tolerance becomes, or the more often you do the sauna, the higher your heat tolerance also becomes. So yeah, your body is very resilient. It's just that we teach ourselves to be not that resilient and more like fragile.
Well, and then that, I guess, brings us back to our earlier point about getting over jet lag, which is super, super important. If what I'm hearing is, if I'm processing this correctly, what you're saying is by actually fasting in the morning, you can produce cortisol, which will wake you up, which could actually have an effect on getting you back into a proper sleep pattern, which we know how hugely important sleep is. And I mean, I've done lots of flights. Like today I'm in Brazil. I've been to Brazil 4 times when I flew from the UAE. Those were 15-hour flights. Like, I mean, there's not many flights in the world that go so long where you are on a completely different time zone. So those types of things are good hacks, tricks, I suppose, to be able to put yourself in that time zone. First of all, do I have that correct? And then second of all, are there any other things that people should think about on that same type of vein for getting over jet lag?
You're correct. So you can time your food intake specifically to the new time zone, and that helps you to adjust to it a bit better to align the hormones with the new environment. And other things.
So melatonin on the night side and then cortisol on the morning side, right?
Yeah, like exercise is also like movement is also like a daylight signal. So exercising in the morning is good. Cold exposure as well in the morning can be do that, releases a bit of the cortisol. Caffeine, you can time the caffeine with that. You like taking caffeine in the morning and blocking out the blue light, like using these blue blocking glasses that have this red lens. You can just filter out this harmful blue light that would suppress the melatonin. So using them at nighttime helps you to sleep better and protects your circadian rhythms a lot as well.
What about, okay, so with the blue light, I always wondered, my computer, I have it set that at, I think it's 7 p.m. it turns on a blue filter. And same with my phone. At 7 p.m. it goes to a blue filter, and then at 11 p.m. it goes, I have it set to go completely black and white and dim the screen to almost nothing. So, and now I start getting reminders like turn off your screen, because I run my own business. I mean, I'm answering emails nonstop. Like I have to physically stop myself from doing this. Do those types of filters that are built into the electronic devices, do they help, or is it really important actually to have an external one like the glasses, like you said?
They do have some effect, so they do mitigate the majority of the light or reduce it, but there's still like the flicker is also something that can be damaging and harmful. So ideally you would still want to use the glasses, but the first best thing would be the filters themselves, as well as like for the smartphone, different kinds of apps have like automatically reduce the exposure to it.
Okay, very good, very good. And for the cold in the morning, is that like a cold shower?
Yeah, the cold shower is the easiest way to do that. Some people also do like winter swimming or cold plunge, depending on time of the year. But yeah, the cold shower is just the fastest and easiest.
Yeah, that's not fun. I'm just trying to think. Okay, and then while we're on temperature, and you've brought it up very quickly a couple of times, the saunas or the heat therapy, or even red light therapy, which I know you and I have talked about privately via email. What's your opinion on these types of things? And then maybe explain a little bit and the benefits, because this is something that as a Canadian, I'm actually not so much used to, but as a European, actually, I think it's a very common thing to take advantage of saunas and heat therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's say heat exposure has a lot of health benefits. So it usually helps. The majority of research has been done on cardiovascular health. So it improves the blood flow, blood circulation, reduces the risk of strokes and cardiovascular disease, especially cardiovascular disease mortality, and just better health outcomes across the board. The other health, like the majority of benefits, come from like increased immunity. So in like Finnish studies or Finnish region, they have been used the sauna for since like the 1950s already to help with influenza and typhus and other kinds of these respiratory diseases. Even like preventive, like especially like preventive is probably better. The preventive use of the sauna has like protective effect against these diseases or infections. And when you're actually already sick, then it may not be the best thing to do, but like regular habitual use before getting sick has you're basically gonna be less often sick, and your duration of the sickness is also going to be greatly reduced because of that. Like the heat basically activates these different kinds of molecules in the body, heat check proteins that repair damaged proteins, as well as misfolded proteins, and also just inhibit viral replication. So even if you were to have, let's say, some viral particles in your system, but you're not sick yet, then some of the heat exposure basically prevents them from replicating.
Wow, okay, that's amazing. When I told my family that I wanted to start doing saunas in the house, they laughed their butt off at me, because we live in Panama, and their advice to me was just like, go sit outside for about 5 minutes, because it is just so hot and humid in Panama. What are the temperatures you would normally recommend then for sauna? Because I mean, I know they're teasing me, but at the same time, they're kind of right. Like, I mean, it is really hot there.
Right. Yeah, the benefits, to reach the benefits, you would have to raise your body temperature up to like 38 degrees Celsius.
Okay.
Which is in Fahrenheit. I'm not sure how much it is, but basically like mimicking a bit of a fever, like a mild fever. Hyperthermia is where the benefits start to come from. And in this research studies, usually it takes like 15 minutes of sauna where you're using the sauna at like 60 to 70 degrees Celsius and upward to like 80 or 100 is usually, but 70 is probably the minimal effective dose where you start to see those benefits. Like maybe like you accelerate the benefits if you increase the temperature, but yeah, like at minimum it's gonna be 17 or 70 degrees Celsius. So 15 minutes
70
is the
degrees Celsius. Wow. Yeah,
yeah.
okay. It's hot in Panama. It's not that hot in Panama. I think it's probably
Right.
about 35 degrees Celsius
Yeah.
in Panama.
Yeah, well, you do elevate your body temperature from just being outside on the sun as well, and you will get some heat shock protein response from that as well. It's just that you have to be there a lot longer and stay there for longer, which itself can have like a bit more negative effects on skin and that sort of thing. But also like exercise mimics the same benefits. So exercising also activates these heat shock proteins and elevates your body temperature. But yeah, you just have to do it a bit longer.
Okay. Well, we're going to set up a sauna in the house under your advice, and we'll see how it goes. I mean, I used to live in the Arctic in the Canadian high north, and we had a sauna there. So I used to go swimming and then spend half an hour in the sauna with the boys afterwards and shoot the shit and talk and stuff like that. So I have very fond memories of it. It'll be interesting to be doing saunas by myself and see if I can do it on a regular basis. While we're on the topic of temperature, I have a question. What's your opinion on air conditioning? Because in Panama, I actually stopped using air conditioning completely, where I think most of my friends think I'm crazy for this, but I don't know. What do you think about using air conditioning basically around the clock?
Like it definitely makes it more comfortable or more enjoyable. So if you are in a cooler, at least like a stable temperature, then you're avoiding these ups and downs. But at the same time, it also can keep your body too comfortable. Like we are always seeking discomfort, and we are seeking to make things less difficult for ourselves, for our bodies especially. So it depends on our goals and such. I think it's from a adaptation perspective, it would be good to have like some period of time where you're like hot and some period of time where you're cold, because these fluctuations themselves create this adaptive response for both ends of the spectrum. And whereas this constant stability, thermal neutral zone, same temperature, that kind of prevents these adaptations from occurring. So actually it would be good to use it sometimes, and at other times not use it, so that your body would basically keep guessing.
Okay, this is why I'll give you my train of thought, and I have not done any studies on this, but logically this makes sense in my brain. We're in Panama, it is 30 degrees outside. If I'm inside all the day and I'm using air conditioning, when I go outside, it's going to feel 10 times worse. I feel like I should acclimatize myself to Panama so that I'm used to it. And I can tell you, after a year of not using air conditioning, actually, I don't quote unquote feel so hot anymore. Yes, I sweat, and that's a natural and normal thing. But I mean, it's not like this oppressive heat like I felt when I first got there. I mean, we're using air conditioning all day long. We'd step outside and be like, oh my God, I can't take this. It's so hot. So I felt like I need to acclimatize myself. Now, when I lived in the UAE, that was kind of impossible. It was like 50 degrees, 55 degrees in the summertime. I mean, there's you just can't acclimatize yourself to that. But 30, 35, that seemed, I don't know, reasonable to me. And my kid, my wife, my mother, we all got used to it very, very fast. And actually, I hope my wife doesn't mind me saying this, she used to complain all the time about the heat in Panama. And since we turned off the AC, she never complains anymore. It's just like, that's just life and normal. So what do you think about that? Do I have it right, or do I have it, what does the science say?
Well, yeah, there are actually some studies that if you are like exercising in a hot environment, so to say, then your heat tolerance goes up and your performance also increases compared to people who are used to or like training in colder environments, so to say, because their body, if you are used to living in a hot environment all the time, then you will eventually get used to it to a certain point. And whereas if you're cold, then it's something that is super, not that significantly hot, but slightly above your average, then it definitely feels hotter than it actually is. So yeah, you're correct in a sense that if you are, not using the AC, then you would get used to it, and subjectively you feel better from that, or you feel less of these swings, less fluctuations. And that is also like how the sauna works. Like the sauna increases your overall heat tolerance, and makes you tolerate the heat better. And as a result of that, like exercise studies, they find that the exercise performance also goes up because their body is more used to the heat. So one of the things that happens during exercise is that your body temperature goes up, and eventually it's going to hinder some of the performance. Whereas if your threshold for the heat is much higher, then you're able to push the performance also a bit longer.
Okay, interesting. And all of these types of things that we're discussing can help with immune support and actually making you more resilient to any type of bacteria or disease or viruses. And these things can actually help people. Okay. Interesting. This is so much fun because I get to just pick someone's brain who knows way more than I do about these things. All right. So continuing on our journey of biohacking, what are some other things that people might want to put into their lives, which will have a positive impact on their life?
Well, we mentioned the cold, we mentioned the heat. Well, the red light therapy is also something that is similar to the heat. So naturally from the sun, we get the entire UV spectrum or the solar spectrum, and it has different wavelengths: blue light, green light, orange, as well as red. So the research finds that the red and the orange amber lights specifically have like quite a positive effect on the body, like a lot of anti-inflammatory effects, reduced oxidative stress, better skin health, faster recovery, better joint health, and even like increased testosterone. So yeah, the red light is very unique in that sense, and it has a lot of benefits. So, but the modern world, we don't really have any exposure to the red light. We only get exposed to the blue light from the artificial lights and the screens. So the excess blue light has like a really bad effect on just general health. Besides the sleep quality, it also causes DNA damage and can damage the eyes, etc. So it's a very quite harmful in excess, because if it's in an isolated form. If you get the blue light from the sun, then it's fine, because you also get the red light that kind of counteracts it. So the idea is to it would be good to have like some artificial source of red light as well in your life with these different therapy devices that have this specific wavelength that you can use, maybe 10 minutes a day or something. And yeah, it's usually feels awesome as well, like really soothing, relaxing, and calm.
Does it help produce vitamin D in the body, this type of light, or do you really need to get that from the sun specifically?
And not the red lights. Yeah, the red lights don't do with the vitamin. There are like vitamin D lamps that have more the UV light, more the bright light. I think the bright light is more for the vitamin D.
Okay, because I know that in a lot of my research, it was saying that vitamin D is one of the best things to support your immune system. And I thought that was very funny that we go into lockdowns around the world and they force everybody to stay inside and get absolutely no sunlight. And then they close all of the beaches so people can't go. And it's like, I mean, we need to have strong immune systems to fight viruses and disease. And now they can't get vitamin D. So, and you're not educating people on supplementation of it. So that just seemed very, I don't know, curious to me, you could say.
Yeah, you're right. The vitamin D is probably the most important hormone for the immune system. And it's, a lot of the other things as well: bone health, hormones, sex hormones, circadian rhythms, eliminating bad cells, etc. Vitamin D is very important. And it's also one of the most common deficiencies. Like the majority of people are deficient in vitamin D, and the only best reliable source is to get it from the sunlight. Although you could use like supplements, some people may not react to it that well, and it may not work. So the sunlight is the best source and the fastest as well.
So when I lived in the UAE, actually everybody there knew that they had to take vitamin D supplements because it was so hot in the summer. Literally, you just could not go outside. So it was a really, really, really common thing that if you ever went to the doctor, it was one of the first things that they checked on you was your vitamin D levels. And the doctors were constantly prescribing vitamin D. That's the first place in the world where I actually lived in where they promoted this. I mean, in Canada growing up, we had 3 feet of snow on the ground in the winter. No one ever told me that I needed to take any type of vitamin D. I think that is really weird, to be honest. I mean, you would expect the hot country with all the sun to not think about it, and then the cold country with no sun to promote it, but it's the opposite.
Well, there are like some racial differences as well, that darker skins have more melanin, which basically blocks some of the UV radiation, and that's why the African Americans tend to be more commonly deficient in vitamin D as well. Whereas with the white skin, pale skin in the north, you basically have less melanin, and you also absorb more vitamin D or more UV radiation, because your body is almost like, even if I do get it very, very rarely, I'm gonna maximize it. Whereas people in the equator and in the sub-Saharan countries, they're getting too much sunlight, so their body has adapted to kind of block, because like excess radiation and excess UV radiation from the sun is also like harmful.
Okay, interesting. So let's jump into supplements then. So we started with vitamin D. What are some of the other supplements that might be able to help someone with immune support?
The next most common deficiency is magnesium. So magnesium is responsible for hundreds of functions in the body, and as well as the immune system. Usually what happens with like autoimmunity, or usually what happens with like an infection, is that the inflammation like almost takes over and creates this cytokine storm, and this oxidative stress that leads down the path of more damage from the infections. And magnesium usually helps to kind of counterbalance that. If you have like sufficient levels of magnesium, then this imbalance is not gonna set in, because your healthy immune cells are able to do their work, whereas with magnesium deficiency, they're not able to fuel themselves. So what magnesium is important for that in this regard, but it is also important for like sleep and stress management, relaxation, plus a bunch of other things. So that's why people usually are at least not getting the optimal amount of magnesium from their food. So over the past few decades, there's been like a 30% reduction in the amount of magnesium and all minerals in our food, because of like erosion and pesticides and poor agricultural crops. Those things reduce the amount of magnesium in our food, and it's also very hard to get it from like the food sources. Is very rare. Like you get it from spinach and pumpkin seeds and almonds and salmon maybe, but they're not usually the most commonly eaten foods. So you would already have to go out of your own way to get magnesium from whole food sources itself. So just taking a supplement is one of the easiest ways to do that.
Do you think that by eating organic food, that the organic food will have higher levels of the minerals that people need, or does that not matter?
It does, certainly, yeah. Like the organic foods tend to be more nutrient dense, and also have like more antioxidants and things like that. So yeah, that is one of the let's say perks of the organic foods. That's more nutrient dense and less pesticides and things like that.
Okay. Well, definitely the pesticides, fungicides, insecticides, I mean, all of these types of things, that makes sense right off the bat. But it is interesting that the actual food can be more nutritious and have more of the vitamins and minerals in it that you need. So you might actually be a lot beneficial, because I think a lot of people look at the organic food, look at what the price is, and then decide that, is it really worth it or anything like that. But actually it might make financial sense as well if you're looking at a cost-to-cost basis. Right. If you're not having to supplement with all of these expensive other things, if you're actually getting what you need from the vitamins. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here, but it's interesting.
No, you're right. I mean, you're right. Like you could pay for the slightly expensive food, or you could pay for the medical bills later down the line. So
yeah, exactly. That's even better point. Yeah. That's another thing that I really love about Central America is in a lot of places in Central America, the food is just naturally organic, because the farmers just don't have money to pay Monsanto for these massive amount of chemicals to dump all over the fields. Okay, yes, the fruits and vegetables have blemishes on them, and they might not quite look as pretty as back home in the States, but I mean, they taste really good. Like actually, they taste phenomenal, and they're just naturally organic. So I think that just moving to a Latin American country straight off the bat, you can actually live a more healthy lifestyle just without having to be purposeful about it. Just arrive and things just naturally are that way.
Yeah.
So let's follow on then with other vitamins, minerals, supplements that can help support immune function.
Yeah, well, a lot of talk during the pandemic was about selenium as well. So selenium is a mineral, and it is helps with a lot of this antioxidant defenses, as well as reducing oxidative stress. So selenium itself isn't that hard to get from whole foods. So you can get it from organ meats, as well as like Brazil nuts. So Brazil nuts are one of the largest source of selenium, and you can cover your almost daily selenium requirements with just 2 to 3 Brazil nuts, which is very easy. So yeah, selenium is a very common one. Zinc is another one that is also got a lot of attention. Zinc is also very high in seafood, red meat especially. And with zinc, they find that like if you start to using like the zinc lozenges immediately when you get the symptoms of cold, then you can cut off the basically the duration of the cold almost in half. So that is like just whenever I do, let's say, notice some sort of a cold, like a coarse throat or something like cold, then taking like the zinc lozenges, that's usually what I do. And so far I haven't been like sick like a long time. So yeah, I think it's pretty effective for that. And yeah, in terms of the let's say zinc requirements, then you don't need like a ton of zinc. Let's say you can cover your daily zinc demands by just whole foods, but doing like a period of sickness or something, then taking a zinc supplement in like a slightly higher dose, like 20 micrograms or 40 micrograms a day, is definitely worthwhile, at least like in the short term, because it would help you to fuel also the antioxidant, not the antioxidant, but the fuel like the immune cell response and things like that. But you don't want to be taking like a zinc supplement chronically, because like excess zinc can cause things like raised cholesterol and lower copper status. So yeah, like the body works in balance, and you doing it one thing in excess all the time is just going to lead some problems down the line.
So it can actually lead to toxicity in the body if you're having too much of it. With
Yeah.
the Brazil nuts, I think that was a great tip, because when I had never heard of this before. I did not know about selenium or the body's function and how necessary it is. And you asked me, well, if you can get Brazil nuts, you should have some of those. I'm like, well, I'm actually traveling through Brazil, so that should be pretty easy. Now we actually have a bowl of Brazil nuts right next to all my other supplements. So now I don't even think about it as food. After I take my first meal, I go over, I take my supplements, I eat 2 Brazil nuts. It's like 2 very large pills that I have to chew. Yeah. So that kind of switch in mentality worked quite well for me. Same with my wife. She doesn't really enjoy them all that much. She doesn't really like those types of things like walnuts or almonds or any type of nuts, but she takes them because she knows that they're good for her. And 2 is such a little amount. It's not like you have to sit there and eat a giant bowl of them or something. So the other one that I didn't know pretty much anything about that I learned from you, and we talked about the supplementation, was boron. Can you talk to me a little bit about this and kind of what its function is? Because that's not like everybody knows vitamin C, everybody knows vitamin D, but there's some of these other minerals that people might not know so much about and the importance in the body.
Yeah, absolutely. So boron is it's not considered like an essential mineral, but it has like essential functions, and it's almost like conditionally essential, or some countries do, other countries don't. So boron basically is like a mineral that is also part of the plant cell wall, like found in legumes and things like that. And the main functions of boron in the body are well, it does a bunch of things, but most of it has to do with helps with vitamin D utilization, as well as testosterone production, and also a lot of these anti-arthritic effects by lowering inflammation. So it's good for the bones, it's good for the sex hormones, and it's just good for overall health and vitality. A lot of people, they may not be getting enough boron, and usually you get it from, let's say, dried prunes. Actually, you can cover your daily demands with just like a single prune or something, and as well as like raisins maybe, and some legumes and those things. They also have avocados, have a little bit, but it's mostly like in plant foods and this cell walls. So yeah, for the like a lot of men, they usually take like a boron supplement. So 3 milligrams a day is kind of the optimal dose for the boron, actually. And it's just like an easier way of getting it if you're not eating, let's say, specifically dried prunes or legumes.
But if you were working with someone and you made a recommendation, would you rather than eat 1 or 2 prunes every day or take a supplement of 3 milligrams of boron every day?
Well, it depends. Like either is fine. Like I'm not like super. Maybe the bioavailability would be a bit higher if you take from the prunes, but even then, I think it's not that significant. So like either way, which one they prefer. So yeah, the boron itself as a supplement, it's hard to like mess up. So even if you take it as a supplement, it's still very safe and effective.
Yeah, because I think that a lot of times people are a little bit fearful because, I mean, I went on WebMD the other day. We were looking at the back of the packages and we were like, okay, I wonder what the RDA is for this. And then you go on WebMD and they're talking about, if you have excess of this, like you can die. And like, I'm not specifically talking about boron, but I mean, lots of these minerals. I'm like,
right.
And my wife's like, oh, that's a little bit scary. I'm like, well, not really. I mean, you would have to have like buckets of this. Like, I mean, they don't really educate you.
Yeah.
Actually, even RDA, what's your opinions on what is recommended? And a lot of these, I think, are government-run programs, opposed to what the science is telling us today of dosages.
Yeah, well, the RDAs can be very like huge variations in them, or like there's a huge difference between meeting the bare minimal requirements for survival and the RDA, as well as like what's the actual optimal dose. So for example, magnesium, you can survive basically by taking only 140 milligrams of magnesium a day. The RDA of magnesium is like 450 or 420, but optimally a lot of people would need maybe like 500 or 600. And even if like you're super stressed out or you're like you have insulin resistance or diabetes, then you may actually even need like 1,000 milligrams. So there's a huge variation in there. And like vitamin C, the vitamin C RDA is also very low, like a few milligrams, or like the survival for vitamin C is a few milligrams. The RDA is a bit higher, but yeah, like if you're maybe let's say infected with like an infection, then the high dose vitamin C is very like efficacious. So yeah, I think that there's just the difference can be like anywhere from 10 to 100 fold between the minimal effective dose and the optimal dose. So yeah, it's just you have to educate yourself a bit about it, and also just try to understand your own individual circumstance in a particular like scenario.
Well, I remember looking at vitamin D, and what the RDA was so super low, and I was like, this is weird. I'm taking 4,000 or 5,000 IUs a day, and I'm going to make up a number, but it was like a couple of hundred. That was the RDA, and I'm like, I'm having 8,000 times or 2,000 times what they're recommending, and I'm like, I've read lots of scientific reports that are now showing that no, we need quite a bit of vitamin D in the body for optimal health. So I think that that's also kind of ties back to the overall topic of biohacking, is not like, okay, what do you need just to sustain yourself to stay alive, but what do you need to thrive, to be the best version of yourself that you can be?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Huge difference between surviving and thriving is huge. And like enjoying yourself at the same time is also like a big part. Like just grinding through life, or feeling tired all the time doesn't sound really good. Whereas if you were to biohack yourself and figure out why you're tired or something, then you would have just more joy as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I mean, I've noticed a massive difference in my life with, I told the story about my weight and how that's affected me by changing my diet and in the optimal way that works for me. But even just over the last couple of months of working with you, I mean, I've noticed a difference. And with the magnesium, I have never slept so well in my entire life. And people are always like, "Oh, you have a new baby. Are you getting any sleep?" I'm like, actually, I'm sleeping amazing.
Yeah.
It's so funny too, because I think because I sleep so well and my wife is taking magnesium and she's sleeping so well, that our son is actually sleeping better too, because he's in a more calm environment and he sleeps through the night completely. Like he's up once or twice to eat and we change his diaper and then that's it. And then we all fall back asleep. But I've never had such deep sleep in my life as with the magnesium. And then one other thing that I learned from your podcast, not from working with you privately, but was Brain FM. You were talking about it on one episode, and we started putting that on. It's basically white noise. And actually, I'll let you describe it a little bit and what your opinion on it is. From my side, it's certainly helped quite a bit.
Yeah, well, this white noise can be very beneficial for like creating this background noise that blocks against the outside noise. So if you're like in this like a bubble, almost a bubble of white noise, then the outside noise has less of an effect. And that is also like maybe creates this subconscious like coherence, like our brain is, it likes these certain patterns and vibrations. And if it is vibrating in this certain frequency, then you're, calmer, more relaxed while listening to it, and also kind of synchronizes yourself with that. And it usually helps with sleep. Any kind of like different kinds of these apps have like similar effects, that your brain, you can change your brain state, by changing some of the frequency or the kind of frequency of the music that you're listening to. And because your brain, has certain frequencies, alpha waves, delta waves, beta waves, and etc. And they are correspondent with certain, let's say, activity states as well. If you're like a meditative state, then it's in more like this alpha wave state. Wakefulness is delta, if I'm not mistaken, or if it's sleep, or beta is wakefulness, and delta is sleep. So yeah, you can kind of actually listen to those noises, those waves, those sound waves, and also change your own brain's state.
Yeah, it is noticeably different. I mean, if I have a ton of emails to respond to, or if I have to write an article, or I have to do client work, I'm now putting on Brain FM and I can just plow through for hours on end. And at the end, I'm like, wow, I got 3 days worth of work done in an afternoon, because there's just, I'm not being distracted every 10 seconds. And I mean, I'm just so focused. I don't know how much of it is placebo effect and marketing and hype, and how much of it is science. I do know that it is definitely making a difference in my life. And then from the sleep side, I think it is also, between that and the magnesium, is really adding to having really restful sleep. Now, with having a new baby, I believe that a baby is used to having sounds all the time. When a baby is inside the womb, there's heartbeat and there's all these types of sounds. He's only 5 weeks old, 6 weeks old. For him to be in a completely silent environment, like, freaks him out. So when we're putting this on, I mean, he calms right down. So, I mean, the white noise has certainly helped. And okay, yeah, you can go get some free app online, and it's like, I don't know, a hair dryer, or the sound of a train, or the vibration of a car. But the Brain FM, I thought, was quite neat, because they're really purposeful about it. Like, it's all science backed. And like you said, they're using the different types of vibration for different type of things that you want to accomplish. So being purposeful in these things, I think, is worth the money. And I'm not sponsored by them or anything like that, but I am a big fan of their work. And I think I paid $50 or $60 a year or something to sign up for the app, and worth absolutely every penny of it.
Nice. Yeah. Well, the brain is a mysterious thing.
Absolutely. So we're getting close to our time here, Siim, but let's kind of circle back and quickly highlight some of the things that we discussed, and if we missed anything that you think is really going to be beneficial for people who want to improve their immune health, especially for the digital nomads and the people who are traveling, because I just think this is such an important thing. Feel free to put those in. So we kind of started, we talked a lot about the intermittent fasting. We've talked about diet. We've talked about the supplementation. We've talked about heat and cold and air conditioning and red light and things like that. What are some of the other things that people should keep in mind for this topic today?
Yeah, well, we didn't talk about like exercise a lot, but regular exercise also has a preventive effect on a lot of infections. So like metabolic health is huge when it comes to determining your outcome of any infection. So if you're with diabetes or high blood pressure, high triglycerides, metabolic syndrome, then basically your immune cells are weakened, and your ability to react to any virus or infection is also lower. So yeah, taking care of your health is important. That means not overeating calories, exercising regularly, doing some intermittent fasting maybe can be useful. But yeah, regular exercise is also just besides the health benefits, also has like a directly impactful benefits on the immune system. But with the caveat that like overtraining is something that actually weakens your immune system. So you have to find like the optimal sweet spot. So being sedentary is bad, overtraining is bad, but the regular exercise a few times a week, maybe like 3 to 4 times a week, and not any more than like an hour is probably the best like the amount.
And do you recommend like weight training, like resistance training, or cardiovascular, or both, or HIIT training, or what do you think the sweet spot in is there with the type of exercise?
Both are beneficial for sure, but when it comes to like improving metabolic health and the body composition, then weight training is by far more superior. Like you're gonna see more improvements in muscle mass and fat loss with resistance training. With the cardio, you can definitely burn calories, and you can lose weight with it and such. But usually it doesn't accompany the change in muscle mass, which is quite critical for determining how insulin sensitive you are, and what your blood sugar levels after a meal. That's much more determined by your muscle mass. So yeah, that's why I much rather prefer build muscle, but you can do the cardio just an addition.
Well, I definitely need to get back into weight training myself, but what I'm really making sure I do is go for a walk every day now. Or if I do my phone calls, I'm no longer sitting at the computer to do my phone calls. I'm pacing in my house, just trying to be upright, because I think that humans are not meant to be sat down for 8, 10, 12 hours a day and then sleeping flat for 8, 9, 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
And I mean, we are meant to be walking around. So these days I have a really pretty area that we're in. So I'll put on my headphones, I'll listen to a podcast, maybe your podcast, and go for a walk for an hour. And actually just even that alone is having a good benefit on my life, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Walking is a good. You're moving yourself, and also like reduce the stress, get your mind off work.
Okay, actually, I was going to call the episode, but then when you were speaking, I thought about one other question that I'm very, very curious about. In the media these days, they talk so much about the dangers of eating meat, how harmful it is. It's harmful for the environment, it's harmful for the body and for longevity and things like that. In my many years of research, I did not find this the case. And actually, in listening to your show, you eat meat, right? You're not a vegetarian or a vegan or anything like that. Can you kind of share what your opinions are on eating animal protein? And also, I want to discuss with you about organ meat, but maybe we can make that a separate point.
Right. Well, for sure, like if you overeat meat, then that could be harmful. And usually when in research, they find this association between meat consumption and, poor health outcomes, cardiovascular disease, or just mortality, is that those people who also eat meat, they're also not exercising. They usually have like worse habits. They're smoking or something like that, and they're overeating calories. So yeah, it's like much rather like how much meat and what kind of meat. So the meat inside like a hot dog or like a hamburger is also categorized as red meat in the studies because of and you're besides getting the meat, you're also getting the sauce and the fries and the hot dog bun and things like that. So the studies are very misleading in that sense. So there's very few studies that actually compare grass-fed steak or regular kinds of meat, whole food meat with the other like plant-based options. So yeah, I think mechanistically the reason why meat would be harmful is also not really solid. So there isn't like any like clear associations between also like higher cholesterol levels and cardiovascular disease, and it's mostly like mediated by especially like not regular cholesterol. If it's like oxidized cholesterol or the large cholesterol particles, then those are associated. But if you're eating meat, then it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get oxidized cholesterol. The cholesterol can get oxidized from many other things, like vegetable oils that you get from like the French fries and other
cookies
like,
on the shelf and chips and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's not like necessarily the meat that is problem; it's all the other things that also go wrong. And the average person, yes, they do eat meat, but they also do the other bad things that are contributing to poor health.
Well, I remember reading many years ago that dietary cholesterol doesn't necessarily equate to blood cholesterol. So just because you eat eggs and they're high in cholesterol doesn't mean that you're going to have a bad heart and get clogged arteries. Actually, if you're eating eggs, I would argue that they're very good for you. I mean, I have not seen a lot of scientific reports that will show me otherwise, but I have seen a lot of propaganda machine that's telling people that, high fat diets are bad for you and you should not be eating eggs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like it's a way of like framing the studies, and the way you conduct the studies is also important.
And as for your point on the type of meat that you're eating, like I put myself in this situation again. I mean, I'm in Brazil. We're going out for churrasco, like Brazilian barbecue, once a week. There's a massive salad bar. I'm eating literally like tons of different types of green vegetables, salads, raw onions, garlic, everything like that. And then they're coming to the table with barbecued beef and chicken hearts and like all these different types of meat, like 5 different types of steak and all these types of things. I mean, that is very different than going to McDonald's and saying like, oh, I'm eating meat. I mean, you can't compare the two. I mean, they're just so different there. So I think that the type and the quality is, you have to put that into context as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, organ meat. Let's dig into organ meat for a few minutes here. This is something that I have struggled with from a, not just a taste side, but also from a mindset side. As a Canadian, we're kind of served meat usually on a, like you go to the grocery store, it is a boneless, skinless chicken breast on a piece of styrofoam. That's it. Like we don't have much of a relationship with our animals at all. And I mean, we don't really see a lot of the organ meat on the grocery stores shelves. Now, I've been gone for 20 years. I married a woman from China. They eat literally everything. I have been watching her for years eating it, and okay, I try everything, but putting it into my regular diet was not a big thing. I listened to your podcast over the last couple of months, and you are a big fan of organ meat. Can you kind of explain to us why someone should also be a fan of organ meat, or what they should know about it to make an informed decision?
Yeah, well, the biggest thing is that organ meats are the most nutrient-dense foods out there, and they have all the vitamins and minerals that your body needs. And yeah, that's pretty much it, though. The biggest reason why you may want to incorporate some organ meats. So liver is the king of that, and yeah, you can just almost cover all virtually like all the vitamins and minerals with just like 1 ounce of liver. And yeah, it's tastes somewhat different, but yeah, it's really nutrient dense, and you don't necessarily, I don't think you need to eat them, but it's just like so easy to cover all your vitamins and minerals with that. So it's like why not?
Mhm. And is there any difference between chicken liver, pork liver, and beef liver? Like we're eating beef liver, I'd say 3, 4 days a week now, which
Mm,
I mean, 1 to 2 ounces, like you had said. So I'm not sitting down for an entire plate of liver, but
right.
yeah.
The there's not a huge difference between the livers or the types of liver, so they're all pretty similar.
Okay, well, that's good. I mean, chicken livers are, I mean, I've had chicken liver pate or duck liver pate. Those are quite tasty. The beef liver is, just fried beef liver is challenging. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
learning. I'm getting
Right.
accustomed to it. The chicken hearts at the barbecue, I think I've had them maybe 5 or 6 times now over the last couple of months. And the first couple of times, I swear I didn't even taste it because I was just trying to get my head through it.
Mm,
Now we were there a couple of days ago, we had it, and I was like, actually, these are really delicious. Like they're really meaty flavor, and they're not that irony flavor that I mean is normally uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Normally accustomed to? No, normally associated with.
mm,
They're not normally associated with like liver. Like liver is like a really intense flavor that people need to get their head around. The chicken hearts just tasted like really meaty. What are some of the other organ meats that someone might want to look into, or maybe the organ meats that have a lot of benefit that are easier to start, I suppose?
mhm. Well, the easier to start is a heart. So heart is actually pretty tasty and very like stingy or rubbery
Mhm.
and almost like tastes like steak. So that is the easiest one to start. It does have like a slightly less nutrients than liver, but it's still
Okay.
a good source of other nutrients like CoQ10, which is actually good for the heart and mitochondria. Um, Another one was maybe like kidney, but yeah, it's a very like a very strong taste and very like unpleasing. So yeah, I think I'm personally not eating any kidneys
Mhm.
because I'm just eating liver. Like the liver itself covers almost everything that you need, and I may have like some heart or even like beef tongue is actually pretty tasty.
Mhm.
Um, the other crazier ones like spleen or pancreas or kidney, yeah, I'm not like really eating those. I'm just focusing on the liver.
Mhm. I always wondered about liver though, because the liver is a filter for the body. So a cow's liver, the cow eats stuff, and then the liver
Mm,
filters out the bad stuff. It is kind of counterintuitive to me that we would want to eat the organ which is a filter.
great.
How does that work? Like I just don't get it, to be honest.
Mm. Well, yeah, the body or the liver filters toxins, but doesn't store them. So
Doesn't store them. Okay.
yeah, so even if it filters them, this doesn't stay there. And most of the toxins are actually in the fat tissue. So because they're stored for calories, and they're put into whey into like the like pantry basically. So the fat tissue is actually more toxin rich than the liver or the kidneys. So yeah, like if you were to be concerned with that, then you would be more interested in eating like more grass-fed stuff and that sort of thing. So the liver itself is like pretty safe.
Okay. And by fat, you mean fat anywhere in the cow? Like, I mean, I eat ribeyes. I like the fattier, the better. I mean, just
Mm,
from a taste perspective. I don't know about it from a health perspective.
right. Well, usually the subcutaneous fat is more of this pantry type of thing that where it stores the calories and extra fatty acids, but like the visceral fat, the like intramuscular fat and fat around the organs, that is more like the quote unquote unhealthy fat, visceral fat.
Okay.
So the like wagyu beef is probably not the healthiest form of it, but regular steak is probably fine, I think. And even then, like the quantities themselves are like so small that it doesn't really have like a huge impact.
Okay. So that's the piece of the puzzle that I was missing with the liver, because I would logically think about it like, okay, it's a filter. It takes out all the stuff that is bad for the body. Why would I
Mm,
want to eat that? But you're saying you want to eat that because it filters things, but it doesn't store it there. So as soon as it filters it, it's pushing it to other parts of the body. So you're not
yeah,
actually eating a concentrated version of the bad stuff, right?
yeah,
Do I
yeah,
have that right?
exactly. Yeah.
Okay, this has been an amazing episode, and I've certainly learned a lot from you today, as well as working with you over the last couple of months. Why don't you explain a little bit about how you help clients traditionally? Because I've talked a little bit about my story, but I mean, you work with people all over the world.
Yeah, well, I do have people from like all across all walks of life, entrepreneurs, poker players, regular housewives, and personal trainers even. So yeah, like usually what I'll do is, I'll assess their like situation in the beginning, like if they have like some blood work, they should do for that for sure. They have genetic tests, DNA tests. Those are all useful information. But usually like based upon all this information that I gather, I put together like a plan for them for their goal of the particular situation they're trying to solve, whether that be fat loss, energy levels, some health problems, productivity, mood, or yeah, everything or anything that they want solved. And based upon that program or the plans, we also have like some consultations, and yeah, it's just very let's say I don't know, auto-regulative or like the proper term would that be. Like I don't have like any strict plan that I follow all the time, although I have like some guidelines and the guideposts. I try to adjust it based upon how I'm going or what's the like progress is. Like if we're starting to see like some different results, then we change it, or if we're getting the results faster, then we can start working on something else, etc., etc. So it's a very like auto-regulative and based upon the individual. And yeah, like depending on how the people would like to work with me, how long they would like to. Some people have worked for me for up to 2 years now, whereas others usually do like on and off like type of consultations. They may take a consultation, try things out for maybe 2 months or so, then come back, etc. And yeah, it depends on the person.
Amazing. I love it. Siim, brilliant conversation today. Learned so much from you. I really appreciate your time. If my listeners want to get a hold of you, if they want to find out more about what you do, where can we send them?
Yeah, thanks, sir. And my website is siimland.com, and on all the social media platforms, I'm also Siim Land.
Perfect. And I will make sure that I link to this at expatmoneyshow.com. Siim, thank you so much for your time, and I will talk to you soon.
Yeah, it was good.